Tama po bang sabihin, ma'am, na yun pong regular monthly envelope which you later on found out contains 50,000 per envelope ay nag-umpisa lamang nung kayo na-appoint as head of procuring entity?
I would like to say yes.
Why were you so uncomfortable with the envelope when you believe that that is just an allowance? And the
Mr.
reason, ma'am, is because you believe that that envelope is a bribe.
It could be.
In connection lang po ma'am, doon sa tanong ni Chair. Tanong ko lang po ma'am, nung naramdaman niyo po na may nag-aabot po sa inyo ng sobre, buwan-buwan, ano po ang pakiramdam niyo? Bakit hindi niyo po binuksan?
I must admit that I was uncomfortable with those envelopes, but parang ang hirap din kasi I'm not sure if others are receiving. Parang ang hirap din I didn't know if others are receiving. I cannot say. So ang ginawa ko na lang is I had this pouch that iniiwan ko lang sa office. Nilalagay ko lang doon yung mga binibigay sa akin na pera.
Sa pakiramdam po ninyo, para po saan yun?
Ang feeling ko is she has naman resources to give to she has probably personal resources that she can share to her people, and I'm not really, ayoko mag-speculate, but the only thing I could say is I wasn't comfortable with it.
Hindi po ba kayo nagtataka? Kayo po yung head ng HOPE, ng procuring entity, tapos may natatanggap po kayo na buwan ng 50,000?
As I mentioned, it is uncomfortable, and that's precisely the reason why I wasn't opening it at all. I was just putting it in one pouch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Chair,
Mr.
would
Chair,
like to recognize Congresswoman Luistro.
thank you. My question is addressed to Ma'am Mercado. Ma'am, do you confirm when you were still in DepEd, you were occupying concurrently USEC for HR and HOPE?
Yes.
Sabay
Mr.
po yun. When were you appointed as Undersecretary for Human Resources and Organizational Development?
We were all appointed together by the President July, but I only assumed
Can you please state the year?
July 2022 po.
Okay.
But I only assumed office in August 15, 2022 because I was still winding up my work with another office.
So you would agree with me if I say that you were appointed as USEC for HR July 22, but you assumed the position August 15, 2022?
Yes,
With
Mr.
respect
Chair.
to your appointment as head of procuring entity, kailan po kayo na-appoint?
That's February 2023.
February 2023. Let's go back to your appointment as USEC for HR. From August 15, 2022, kayo po ba ay pinaakyat din ni ASEC Sunshine to receive this envelope which you refused to open?
Not on 2020. I don't recall 2022. We have we have gifts on December, but I don't recall a monthly thing before that.
In other words, from August 15, 2022, that is the date of your appointment as USEC for HR, until before February 2023, which is your appointment as head of procuring entity, you are not receiving any envelope from ASEC Sunshine.
No.
And you will confirm that this envelope started only when you were appointed as head of procuring entity.
It's actually not very clear to me anymore, but I recall we also received some amounts in in 2022, but it's very vague to me anymore. So, and then I don't have the envelope. So, parang it wasn't.
So how do you receive those amounts which are vague, not regular, if there are no envelopes?
No, I think it's only once. It's like a Christmas bonus. Pero siguro hindi siya naka-envelope kasi I didn't keep it.
Tama po bang sabihin, ma'am, na yun pong regular monthly envelope which you later on found out contains 50,000 per envelope ay nag-umpisa lamang nung kayo na-appoint as head of procuring entity?
I'm still keeping those envelopes, so I would like to say yes.
Yes, because it is very clear from your affidavit, no? This envelope started in February and ended in September of 2023. And earlier you said kayo po'y na-appoint bilang Hope noong February 2023. And prior to that, since your appointment in August 15, 2022, wala kayong nare-recall regular envelope which you were receiving from ASEC Sunshine. Can you please enlighten us? What is with Hope? Bakit doon lang po nag-umpisa itong envelope na ito upon your appointment as head of procuring entity?
It's a very difficult task, especially for someone who has not tried to be one before. Parang it's an area that I really evaded all my entire government life. But there's just too many already pending procurement at that time. So when I was asked if I could be designated as the Hope, I first referred them to other people who are seasoned in procurement, like sina Yusek Rebsi, but Yusek Rebsi was already too preoccupied with operations. So I finally accepted the position, and it was difficult because I have to study the procurement law, and I was given I had a lawyer and someone who's only a retiree to review the documents with me when we signed the contracts. And I had commitment from when I accepted the post, I made it a family decision, you know. Like among the execom, I asked our legal before, Yusek Brady and ASEC Amanda Nograles, that everything that I signed has to be thoroughly reviewed by legal. And so I had that commitment of support from everyone in the execom, and so I accepted the post.
In brief, ma'am, can you please enlighten us? Why do you say na mahirap, difficult ang position ng Hope?
Because you have to look through all the documents, and it's like
Which documents, ma'am?
everything that goes through the bidding process. I am not part of the bidding process itself, but on the time that I was appointed, I was the one tasked to form the structure of who's chair for BAC 1, BAC 2. So I spoke to all the people which I know I will have comfort to chair specific committees at specific BAC. But the process of bidding, I'm not part of it because you have to maintain you have to make sure that you're not enmeshed with the process itself, but you're just reviewing to make sure that the Vice President Secretary is protected with everything that I signed because it's a delegated function. She's supposed to be the Hope.
In other words, ma'am, you're the person who check all the documents coming from BAC before the Vice President signs or approves.
No, I signed. Because
You sign for the...
I have to sign because I'm the one, the Hope signs. It's delegated to me already.
And you will agree with me if I would say na you consider it difficult because it concerns matter about procurement and bidding,
Yes.
where there are a lot of issues surrounding, sometimes
And it's just,
issues
too
about
many.
bribery and corruption. You agree with me?
yes,
And what do you think is the reason kung bakit yung envelope nag-start lang during your appointment as Hope?
think
Bakit
it's-
po walang envelope nung HR pa lang kayo? Tapos biglang nagka-envelope nung naging hope kayo?
I think it's like an allowance maybe for an extra work because sometimes I have to stay until midnight to look at the documents when sometimes I have
If
one.
that is just an allowance, ma'am, then the rest of the officials of the DepEd should be receiving also their respective envelopes. Do you think so? Don't you think so, ma'am? If that is just an allowance, then the rest of the officers of DepEd should have their own envelopes as well.
Mr. Chair, that's precisely the reason why I did not open any of it. Because
I
that was
understand.
very uncomfortable on
I
my
understand. And that leads me to the next question, ma'am. Why were you so uncomfortable with the envelope when you believe that that is just an allowance?
part. Because, Ma'am, I'm 40 years, Mr. Chair, I'm 40 years in government. The only time I have an ombudsman case is when I advised my principal not to sign an importation, when I was the deputy cabinet secretary, and I advised my principal not to sign an importation because there was no rice crisis. That's my only ombudsman. I have to protect that name. Self-made po kami. I come from Samar. I was a scholar since I was grade 1 until I took my PhD. So I have all reasons to protect my name, Your Honor. And I'm in the home stretch of my career. And then I'm being thrown into that position, which I have no control because I'm only studying it. So that's my...
Ma'am, I wish to remind you of the terminologies which you mentioned already. With all due respect po sa inyo, no? Because I want to elicit this information from you. Kanina po sabi nyo, the position, the job of hope is very difficult. Do you confirm?
yes,
Yes. And you did not open the envelope because you feel so uncomfortable. Do you confirm?
Yes.
And then recently you made mention na it was only once that I had this case with the ombudsman. Do you confirm?
Yes, ma'am.
And you also made mention that you wish to protect yourself. Do you confirm?
Yes.
And the
Mr.
reason,
Chair.
ma'am, is because you believe that that envelope is a bribe. Do you agree with me? Because
I'm
otherwise, you will not appreciate the job as difficult. You will not uncomfortable opening what you believe is allowance. You will not be thinking about the ombudsman case. You will not be thinking about protecting yourself. The reason why you are considering all these concerns is because you believe that the envelope is a bribe. Do you agree? Yes or no, ma'am?
It's kind of harsh word to use, bribe, because if
Or should I say, it is a means to influence your decision being the hope?
it could be.
You said yes to that? You said it could be.
Could be.
I wish to manifest, Mr. Chair, that on the story, on the narration of the resource speaker about this envelope, she received and she refused to open until the same is donated from February 2023 to September 2023 is a means actually to influence the decision of our resource speaker being the one who approved all the decision of the BAC in behalf of the DepEd Secretary. Tama po ba, ma'am?
There was only one instance that I could recall na but there was no one spoke to me about there was an instance where I tried to let a bidding lapse, but I ended up signing it because there was a protest. I'm not comfortable discussing it.
But I wish to state for the record, Mr. Chair, that with the narration of our resource speaker, she earlier manifested that she believes that those envelopes are means to influence her decision as hope. Ma'am, I wish to invite your attention to paragraph 6. You mentioned in this paragraph that a certain attorney Reynold Monsayak suggested in the presence of 3 DepEd officials na pag-usapan na lang ang 2022 budget para hindi masayang. However, you firmly asserted that the procurement must be implemented and conducted in strict adherence with the rules. Do you confirm this?
Yes.
Can you please enlighten us? Sino po yung ibang DepEd officials present during this incident?
Actually, it was 1 director and 2 consultants.
Can you please state the names?
The director was Director Resty Osias, and the consultants was Juna Soriano and Ferdinand. Ferdinand. Forgot the family name.
Where did this meeting happen, ma'am? Kanino
was-
pong opisina nangyari to?
It was not in DepEd. I was having lunch. There was a training ongoing in one hotel. I don't recall anymore whether it's Linden or Discovery Suites, but it's just in Ortigas area. And I was having lunch with these people, and we were discussing a project. And then that's when I was approached.
Does that project have something to do with the 2022 continuing
no,
fund?
it was different.
It was different.
Yeah.
But that lunch was shared with these 3 other DepEd officials along with Attorney Monsayak.
No, Attorney Monsayak was not part of the lunch. I think he probably came out from the training, and then that's when he joined us.
He joined you, and then to whom did he direct what he said? Na pag-usapan na lang natin yung 2022 para hindi masayang. Kanino po ba niya sinasabi ito? Sa inyo o doon sa 3 DepEd officials pa?
It could be to me and the director, because Director Resty was also a member of the BAC.
How about the 2 others? Are they members of the
No.
BAC also?
No, they're not, because the consultants we were discussing a DepEd Guru program. It's an app that we were discussing.
And can you enlighten us? Ano po bang naging reaksyon nung kasama nating director? Her name is Director
Osias.
Osias.
Well, I think his reaction was that parang, ba't niya sinabi yun, we're not, may other people there.
I see.
Parang ganon.
Because those 2 other consultants are not part of
Yes.
the BAC.
Yes.
And did she accede to what Attorney Monsayak said?
No. He's a very strict director as far as procurement.
She did
is-
not accede.
He.
Did not accede. And kayo po, you asserted that the procurement must be implemented and conducted in accordance with the law. You said that.
Yes po.
And Attorney Monsayak heard that.
Yes po.
And after this incident, ma'am, what happened?
I left na. I left already.
You left. But you recall that after some time, kayo po ay kinausap na ni Miss Sulaika, ni Attorney Lopez, the Chief of Staff of Vice President Sara. Please enlighten us. What happened during that conversation?
Parang a day, mga afternoon, I got a text. When I got the text, it was a familiar text because these were the same texts that is sent to those who are asked to leave as well. So when I saw it, I prepared what I should tell them and tell her. And I prepared that I'm not resigning, but I'm retiring because I'm I'm already in at age level where I could retire properly, and so when I went there, I knew what the issue would be, because the kind of text that I received was the same text that was received by Chris Arnoco, ASEC Chris Arnoco, and the others.
Who is Chris Arnolfo, ma'am?
He's an ASEC also that was asked to resign.
He was asked to resign for what reason, if you're aware?
No, I'm not aware.
You are not aware.
I just get to know being an HR, and then I was their nanay-nanayan in DepEd. So I get to be their sounding board and their apprehensions, because they're young people, their career. So yun yung situation. And so when I arrived at the OBP's office in Mandaluyong, sinabi na there's this issue of a teacher that is in my office and some other issues. So kinat ko na lang si Yusek Solaika, sabi ko, in my 40 years in government, I knew that I work on trust. So if the principal doesn't trust me anymore, then you don't have to find reason for me to go. So I'm ready to resign, to retire. Here are the things that I need to do for retirement. I need to say goodbye properly to the institution that I serve well.
For the record, ma'am, did you resign or did you retire?
I'm being asked to resign. I did not. I retired. I
You
applied
retired.
for retirement.
So when did you retire?
Effective November 1.
So that is 1 month
No.
from the supposed date
No,
when
they
you're
don't
supposed to
li-
retire?
They don't like 1 month. I was actually trying to ask for December 30, but they wanted it on that day that they spoke to me.
This is 4th week of October when Attorney
I
Zulueta
think third.
talked to you.
I'm not very sure anymore.
3rd week of
with it.
October. They want you to resign on that date?
On that very day.
On that very date. But you said,
I'm not going to resign because I have to honor my 40 years in government, you know. What would I do after resigning?
and how did you feel when on the
Oh.
3rd week of October you're being asked to resign?
I was so devastated because I couldn't find a reason why I will have to go, you know.
What were you thinking during that time? Can you please share with us your thoughts? Ano pong iniisip nyo during that time when after 40 years of being in DepEd, dedicating all your life and career in DepEd, suddenly there is Attorney Zulueta asking you to resign right then and there?
I was very sad. But it wasn't a surprise, Mr. Chair, because there were 6 people before me that went through that process. So I wasn't surprised. So what I did the night before when I got the text, I already prepared myself. But I'm human and I worked very well for the past year. So I was really very devastated with what they did to me. And that's also the reason why I refused initially to face this panel, because I said I'm so wounded as a bureaucrat. So baka So I just didn't. Siguro what was hurting is that when I left, they were trying to. Marami kasing press that was running after me and asking why I left. So my children and I flew to Guam for 3 days just to evade the press, which nandun na rin sila sa gate namin sa village. And I think what was hurting is that they were trying to justify my departure by saying that I was favoring certain suppliers, which I told
You don't believe that.
I told my kids.
You reject that.
I told my kids I left DepEd with my pride intact and with integrity because I have not favored any. I don't even speak to suppliers. If there are petitions or things that has to be settled at Hope level, I go at the middle of DepEd where it's seen by everyone, and that's where I speak to the suppliers.
Last question, ma'am. Sasang-ayon po ba kayo if I would say na yung pagtanggi nyo kay Attorney Reynald Monsayak na pag-usapan na lang yung 2022 continuing fund. Ang dahilan kung bakit kayo pinagre-resign ni Attorney Zulueta?
That's very speculative, ma'am.
From your point of view, ma'am, it can be right, it can be wrong, but from your point of view,
It could be.
it could be the reason. Dahil tumanggi kayo na pag-usapan ang 2022 continuing fund, posible na ito ang dahilan kung bakit kayo pinag-resign ni Attorney Zulueta. Thank you, ma'am. I submit, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The Chair would like to recognize the presence of our Senior Deputy Speaker from the 3rd District of Pampanga, Honorable Aurelio Dong Gonzales Jr., the Honorable Chino Miguel Almario from Davao Oriental 2nd District, the Honorable Margarita Attorney Mix Nograles, Deputy Majority Leader of PBA Party List, and the Honorable Rodante Marcoleta from Sagip Party List. Yes, Congressman Rodriguez. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I proceed the interpolation of our witnesses, I'd just like to pick up on the point that Congresswoman Luistro just mentioned po, no, while she was on that matter of the reasoning perhaps of the request of, is it USEC or ASEC Munsayak?
Asset.
ASEC Munsayak. You mentioned po kay Attorney, upon questioning ni Congresswoman Luistro, that it is speculative to say that perhaps the reason that you were asked to step down was because of the request which you rebuffed po, no? But in your affidavit, you mentioned here that the timing of my meeting with Ms. Zulaika struck me as more than coincidental. It gave me the impression that my candid response to Attorney Munsayak's suggestion was the real reason behind the push to relieve me of my office. Of course, Mr. Chair, we understand the predicament that the good USEC is in. It was very difficult to be forthright in times like this with the allegations as heavy as this. But you have to be honest with us, po, Madam USEC, Mr. Chair. At the time, you did feel that there was a relation between the request for you to resign and your refusal to work on the procurement as asked by Attorney Munsayak.
No, not at the time. But because it was happening so fast, Mr. Chair. So I parang it happened so fast. Events happen one at a time. There was so many things to close. I have so much things to move out from so I didn't have the time. But on a hindsight, when it's almost a year from now, many months already, you kind of find that reason na siguro yun yung events, simply because I was getting information from my colleagues that they're saying that I was moved by the Vice President out because I was favoring some suppliers, and it hurt me so much because I have not spoken to any supplier. In fact, there was a supplier which I learned later was sister of our family lawyer and a family doctor, and I did not make a decision on that specific case. I raised it to the office of the Vice President to make the decision, just to make sure that there's no doubt on your decision for certain suppliers. So I made a confidential memorandum to the President, to the Vice President, saying that there are allegations of bribe in this specific case, so I'm raising it to you to validate the issues. So siya yung gumawa ng decision.
So at that point, you would say that you feel then the reason that you were asked to step down was because of the allegations of favoring.
No.
So
No, not at the time. I think they used it only when I left na. When I left na. Because they have to justify why I have to leave, Parang masyadong, the reason that was given was a little shallow.
okay. So you believe that the reasoning that you're favoring suppliers is shallow and belated. It was something that they were grasping at a latter time. So right now, when we ask you, what did you feel is the reason for Attorney Monsec to ask you, for Ms. Zolaika to ask you to step down?
I think it's, I would believe that it's really the work on the procurement side.
So, tama po yung sinabi ni Kong Jinky. She was hinting at that. You just had difficulty saying it.
Yeah,
But
on a hindsight, yes.
In hindsight. And you stand by your affidavit now when you say that it seemed as more than coincidental po, no? That the conversation of your resignation came right after your rebuffing of the, I wouldn't say advances, but the suggestion that you do not intervene with your duties in procurement.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to take up from that point, no, from Congressman Luistro. But so I'll start now over from your affidavit as a whole. Of course, these are very heavy accusations. This is a very heavy narration, and of course, Chairman Dan Fernandez has already given some insight as to your background. So it really gives us some credibility, an idea of who you are and why you would come out to say this. So with that, we'd just like to verify, of course. I know some of these questions were already asked prior, but we'd like to really test the narration. So, Madam Yusek, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that at least 2 or 3 times po, you signed the checks. And this was for the amounts of 37,500,000. And you're sure that this is sourced from the confidential fund. How do we know po that this is...
No, I'm not. I signed checks.
The checks.
Because when you sign checks, there's a document, there's a paper naman that says where the what fund it is.
And you mentioned that you are one of the co-signees.
But only for checks.
For the
we have
checks.
no idea what how the confidential fund is
Of course.
used.
Yes.
Or
I'm limiting my questions purely to the checks. It's
Yes,
that which you have
yes.
personal knowledge. So you mentioned here that you signed checks related to the confidential fund, and there were documents to prove that this is in relation to the confidential
Yes.
fund. Who else were your co-signers po in the check?
Yusek Ann.
Yusek Ann is here. She is present. Maybe ask si Chair. We are free to ask other resource persons po naman, no? Because it's as in an inquiry in aid of legislation.
Yes, please continue.
Maybe ask Yusek Sevilla. You were mentioned in this affidavit. Do you confirm that you signed these checks together with Yusek Mercado?
Mr. Chair,
Yusek
Sevilla.
Sevilla, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Your Honor. As part of my work as the Undersecretary for Finance, I do the ministerial task of processing and releasing payments. And for a check to be released, there should be 2 signatories. And in the designation of authorities to sign checks, all undersecretaries are authorized to do the signing of the checks. And there's a limit also, Your Honor. For example, until 10 million, that's the director level. Up 10 million and up, it's now the undersecretary. So in the case of the confidential fund, when it was processed and released, there are 2 signatories, and I confirm that one is mine and the other is Yusek Gloria Mercado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have confirmation of that narration, that part of the affidavit na co-signee po, the co-signer, si Yusek Sevilla. Yusek Sevilla, can you confirm to us how many checks po kaya ito? Just to help refresh the memory of Yusek Marcolet.
There were 3.
Yusek Mercado.
Your Honor, Mr. Chair, there were 3 checks that were issued per quarter. I'm getting the details, Your Honor, from our accountant who is also present. They're the one preparing the checks, but I don't have the exact details. But I remember that the release is done per quarter. And 150 million that was appropriated for 2023 divided by 4 quarters is 37.5 million. So there were 37.5 million per quarter that were issued as checks.
Okay, so we now have confirmation that tama naman po yung narration ni Yusek Mercado, 2 to 3 checks. Now we have confirmation it's 3. So the total amount that she is attesting to have been signed off for is 112,500,000. Would that be a fair statement, Yusek Sevilla?
Mr. Chair, I confirm that the total of 37.5 million checks is 112.5 million.
Thank you. Yusek Mercado, you mentioned po in your affidavit in paragraph number 4 that you received a total of 9 envelopes. Of course, now we understand that you had apprehensions and that you had some difficulty accepting it, and we'll come back to that na lang po, no? But you mentioned here that a certain ASEC, the HEA at the time, si Miss Fajarda. Is she here today? No, it's not here. So si Asik Fajarda, is she still in the office of the OVP, DepEd? Would you know? She's with the OVP right now. Okay. And you mentioned that she would give you the envelopes. Would you recall if the envelope had the marking hope po, no? It was
Yes,
labeled as
yes,
hope.
Mr.
Was this
Chair.
typewritten? Was this printed?
No, it's written.
Written. Would the handwriting be familiar?
I'm still keeping those envelopes.
Oh, you still have the envelopes. Mr. Chair, may we request perhaps that these envelopes be produced as object evidence for this committee? So perhaps in a...
The envelope, I think, was already, the content of the envelope was already donated.
Yes.
But with respect to the envelope, you still have it in your possession. Tama po ba?
It's in my home.
Okay, so may we request Yusek Mercado to please, dala po ba ninyo ngayon?
Hindi po.
Hindi. So siguro in the next scheduled hearing, may we request na pakidala po ninyo para ano po namin.
Meron pang next schedule.
Ma'am, pakilapit lang po ninyo yung microphone para medyo clear at maliwanag po. Thank you po.
So,
Please continue. Please proceed.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that would be very helpful and we'd really appreciate if you could produce that. That would be object evidence po if talagang handwritten po yan and if we're able to prove kung kaninong handwriting. This would just serve to verify po no, the veracity of your narration. So, meron pong envelopes that were labeled Hope. They were not labeled Miss Mercado. They were not labeled Ma'am Gloria po ba? Is that how you go? What is the name that you go by po for people familiar with you?
Glo.
Glo. So it didn't say Dearest Glo. It didn't say Music
It's just
Mercado.
Hope.
Just Hope. Just Hope. Okay, I'll come back to that po at a later time. Going back po to the lunch of, you had the lunch, according to paragraph 6 po, no? You substantiated that your lunch was in Discovery Premier po ba? Or-
I don't recall anymore whether it's Linden or Discovery, but just within those hotels.
And you had that lunch with 2 other colleagues and then si
Three.
attorney, 3 colleagues.
Yeah, one of my directors, Attorney Resty, Ucias, and 2 consultants
2 consultants. And then si Attorney Monsayak joined you
joined
at
us.
a later time. Mr. Chair, may we ask si Attorney Monsayak? Good afternoon po, sir. Sir, ano po yung position nyo at the time? You were USEC?
Good afternoon, sir, Your Honor.
Attorney Monsayak, you are recognized, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Your Honors. During that time, I was new at DepEd as Assistant Secretary for Procurement.
You were an ASEC for procurement. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
And at the time, would you confirm that you were at a training? Do you recall the narration of this lunch that that USEC Mercado has laid out today?
Yes, Your Honor. The very good thing about this is I kept all our conversations and it would debunk the timeline being narrated by USEC Glo Mercado here, especially about the reason she was supposedly removed by the appointing authority. And I remember that lunch. Your Honor, can I provide context for the narration?
Hopefully, Mr. Chair, may I just clarify? My question is about the lunch po. No? Yung whether or not the reason for the removal or whatever else.
Yes.
We'd like to hear that, but sir,
Yes.
perhaps at a later
Yes, sir.
time after interpellation by other members.
Yes, sir.
But my interpellation is purely on the lunch. If you could qualify the context po. Na lang.
I remember the lunch. It was a training conducted at Linden Suites regarding procurement. It was the time that, because when the first bidding, 2022 bidding was conducted, the bid opening, I was not yet an employee of DepEd. So it was conducted, I think, August. I joined DepEd at October 1. But when I was there, I saw that all the bidders...
Excuse me, can I... pwede po ba puputulin ko po muna?
Yes, Your Honor.
Attorney, nag-take ka na po ba ng oath?
Opo, nag-take po oath kanina kasama ng mga iba pang resource
Okay.
persons.
Attorney Powa, nag-take na rin po ba kayo ng oath?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Kanina po.
Okay, so please continue.
So naalala ko po yan, nung pumasok po ako, nakita ko po yung sa original bidding ng 2022, halos lahat ng bidders nadidisqualify na. At yung 2022 funds, maglalaps na yan end of 2023. So nakita ko ho yan na nagpo-post qualification pa sila. Nandun ho si Yusek Glomer, kasama ho si Resty Osias. Hindi ko ho kilala yung dalawa, no? So, una ho, wala akong dahilan o interes o inclinasyon na magbigay ng isang illegal na order sa isang publikong lugar na may mga tao na hindi ko man lang kilala. Ang naaalala ko po dyan, si Resty po ang kausap ko, sabi ko, ano ang plano nyo dyan? Kasi kung itutuloy nyo yung post-qualification at maglalaps yan, hindi na aabot yan sa December 2023. So, mag-decide na kayo kung ire-rebid nyo yan. Kasi kung ire-rebid nyo yan, hindi masasayang yung pondo, mayu-utilize pa yan bago mag-end yung 2023. Yan po yung mismong sinabi ko. Kumbaga, pinagde-decide ko na ho sila kung itutuloy pala nila yung post-qual nila na sobrang na-DQ na halos lahat ng mga bidder or magre-rebid na sila kasi tapos na naman yung period for post-qualification at marapit na rin mag-lapse yung 90-day maximum period for procurement. So parang sinabi ko, mag-decide na kayo kung i-rebid nyo yan kasi kung i-rebid nyo yan, aabot pa yan, hindi masasayang yung 2022 funds. So I remember that, Your Honor. Ang tanong ko lang ho, ba't naman ho ako mag-uutos ng illegal sa isang USEC na head of procuring entity na may mga kasamang tao na hindi ko man lang kilala?
Thank you for the qualification.
Can I
po.
just interject?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Congressman Gutierrez.
Yes, Deputy
Yeah.
Speaker.
Mr. Chair, just so that I can fix my timelines no, and my notes. At that time po, Attorney Monsayak, ano pong posisyon ang hawak ninyo?
Assistant Secretary for Procurement po ako.
So ASEC na po kayo at that time?
ASEC lang po ako.
Kailan po kayo na-appoint na ASEC?
Nag-assume po ako October 1, Mr. Chair, Your Honor. October 1, 2023.
October 1,
2023 po.
2023. So, head kayo ng procurement.
Ay, hindi po. May boss po ako na USEC for Procurement po.
Okay. So, but when you assume your position as ASEC, you're appointed as ASEC, no? Correct?
Opo, Mr.
You were
Chair.
ASEC for what?
Procurement po.
So for procurement. Okay. Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that. No, thank you. So my apologies to Congressman Gutierrez.
Please continue, Congressman Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, DS Suarez. So USEC, just to take over from there. Also to get in line
Mr.
with
Chair, sorry.
I yield to my colleague.
Congressman
Mr.
Pami
Chair, may you
Zamora.
just clarify kung kailan eksakto yung lunch nangyari? Sir?
Hindi ko na ho maaalala.
Kanino po
kasi-
ninyo ina-address yung tanong nyo?
Ay, kay Attorney Monsayak po,
Attorney
Mr.
Monsayak,
Chair.
please respond.
Your Honor, Mr. Chair, hindi ko na ho maalala yung actual lunch. Pero ang maganda po kasi dito, na-save ko ho yung mga conversation namin
Alright,
ni
so what
Yusek
month
Lo. So,
sorry, with the indulgence of Congressman Rog, I'll just take like 5 seconds. What month was this, Attorney Monsayak, Mr. Chair?
Please continue, Attorney Monsayak.
Your Honor, I have to check on my records. Pero alam ko ho, bago pa lang ho ako sa DepEd niyan, siguro baka October lang din po yan.
Anong year
Saan
po?
ko
Anong year?
2023 po, Your Honor.
2020, okay.
Kanina si Ma'am Gloria, Ma'am, kailan niyo po sinabi, when did the lunch occur?
Yusek
I
Mercado.
wasn't also very specific because I could not recall the exact date. But it should be October.
All right, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please continue, Congressman Rog.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gutierrez.
Just in line po with before we go back to the substance of the dinner, the lunch itself, just for the timeline. So prior to the October 1 appointment to ASEC for procurement, ano po yung position po ninyo, USEC, ASEC?
Your Honor, Mr. Chair, I was spokesperson for the Office of the Vice President during that time, before I assumed office at DepEd.
Since when po yung appointment po in the OVP?
Nagsimula po ako sa OVP when the Vice President assumed position.
Given that the OVP was concurrent secretary with the DepEd, would you say you are familiar with the members of the DepEd, even prior to your assumption in October 1?
Ironically, Your Honor, kagaya po ng sinabi ni Yusek Glomer, yung mga tao po sa DepEd, hindi po sila yung mga taong dating nakasama na ni Vice President Sara sa trabaho. Nag-create po talaga ng selection panel, tiningnan yung merits, tiningnan yung credentials. So, hindi ko po sila kilala. Ang ironic po, ang medyo kilala ko po talaga, si Yusek Glomer because she's married to a fraternity brother in UP.
I see. So, Mr. Chair, so your statement earlier is that you are not familiar with the processes of procurement, at least because you just entered as ASEC October 1. But you are familiar with USEC Glo.
Your Honor, I'm a little bit familiar with the procurement process because I used to be head of a government agency, so I oversaw everything the procurement process.
So just not familiar with this particular case?
Yes, Your Honor, because when I joined, the first bid opening was already conducted.
I see. So if that were the case po, no, going back then, thank you for the clarification of the timeline. Going back to the lunch, you do admit to having discussed about procurement issues. It's just you deny that it was an illegal order.
Yes, Your Honor. Bakit ko naman po sasabing pag-usapan na lang natin to sa harap ng maraming tao, sa harap ng DepEd officials. Parang ang sinasabi ko doon, mag-decide na kayo kung ire-rebid nyo yan or itutuloy nyo yung post-qua. Kasi kung ire-rebid nyo yan, aabot pa yan at mayu-utilize yan before the year end. Ba't ko naman po mag-uutos ng illegal? And Your Honor, can I elaborate on the timeline just to show that what Yusek Glomer said earlier about the reason for her removal is
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, the SJJ.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think, with all due respect, not to the resource person and the
I
witness.
apologize, Your Honor.
Oh, no, nothing to apologize for. I just want to make sure that we're giving proper direction to the questions of Congressman Gutierrez. So if the resource persons would be reminded na let's stick na lang to answering the questions as they were, and then you'll have your chance naman later on to also expound on certain events and certain timelines that you'd want to explain. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, the SJJ. Kindly continue, Congraj.
Thank you, Chairman Konghun. So yes, I do agree with DS Suarez. As much as we want to hear the timeline, perhaps at a later time, I'll just pursue my line of questioning. I'm sure
Yes, Your Honor.
some of my other colleagues would like to pursue po yung timeline nung resignation.
Yes, Your Honor,
But
Mr.
for
Chair.
the purpose of my interpellation, I'm satisfied with the answer of Yusek Mercado that as to her hunch as to the reasons which she was asked to resign, and as to the timing of which, given the lunch that happened in the Lint Suites. No? I just have one more question lang po siguro, and then I'm going back now in relation to the envelopes that were labeled Hope. You were being questioned po earlier, Yusek, Mr. Chair, that about your interpretation of what it meant when you were receiving these envelopes. And you mentioned you narrated in your affidavit that the envelopes were handed to me monthly by Assistant Secretary Sunshine Fajarda, which she says came directly from the office of Vice President Sara Duterte. And you mentioned that you quoted, "Galing kay VP," is what she would typically say as she hands the envelopes. What is your appreciation of that statement? Ano po yung ibig sabihin ng galing kay VP?
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned earlier, it's for me it's kasi meron naman siyang ang appreciation ko, the BP naman has other resources to share. So ganun lang kasimplistic yung tingin ko at first. It was only when I move out already that I give it a hard thought.
Of course, I mean, this is just testing to your personal knowledge. We have no idea, we have no clue kung talagang galing kay VP po yun. All that happens is that it is accompanied by that statement by ASEC Sunshine.
Siguro kaya mo nalilink doon kasi si Asek Sunshine yung nagbibigay.
Because she was Heya at the time.
Yeah.
So you would assume from the Heya's closeness, proximity of both personal relation and by office, that she would have no reason to lie as to the source of that fund. Parang galing kay VP. But you're right, it could be a valid source, could be not. But I noticed during the interpellation of Congresswoman Luistro, you really had an apprehension. You said that bribery was too harsh a word. Could you expound on that thought?
I think it's just not in my language to say it's bribery because I have not experienced it.
And I would tend to agree, Mr. Chair, because generally when you speak of bribery, it's when you are offered a gift, offered compensation to entice you to do or not to do something that's within your duty. However, that's just the more general term of bribery po, no? But we also have the other. We also have indirect bribery. And that's in the case when a person is offered a gift by not for any act to do or not to do, but by mere virtue of your public office. Would that be closer to what you were feeling at the time? Because there was no conversation. Walang sinabi naman po na itong envelope, gawin mo to, wag mong gawin to.
Wala
But it was
namang-
simply by virtue of your position. The envelope says it all.
Yes,
Hope.
Yes.
And more
yeah.
colloquially, kilala ang indirect bribery as payola. Did you have an inclination na ito ay payola?
No.
So you said yes to indirect bribery but no to payola. Would you care to explain?
It's those are words that are not in my vocabulary, so if you excuse me.
Of course. I will not belabor po, no, and I have a respect for whatever semantics you choose to prove. But I'm just giving the basis on the envelope only saying hope, and there was no gift or compensation to ask of what to do and what not to do. But it was merely by virtue of your position. It would appear that you're receiving this. One last question po on that. Would you know if other employees of DepEd received the same envelope? And would you know ano po yung nakasulat sa mga envelope po nila?
No. I would know of one, but the rest I don't know.
You know of one more. Would you be at liberty to divulge?
No.
Not the identifying marks, but at least yung level, yung position po niya. Was it the USEC level, ASEC level?
ASEC level.
ASEC level. So there would be confirmation of more than just the hope. Would you know kung ano po yung nakasulat sa envelope na yun?
No. No, we don't get to see because we're called one by one.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank the good USEC for this, for her narration of the affidavit here and being forthright. I'd like to just reiterate our hope that the envelopes will be produced as object evidence for us to discuss, and I'll be yielding to other interpellators who might wish to question. Thank you very much,
Thank you
USEC
po.
Mercado, and thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
po.
Chairman.